Welcome to All Day. I am Ari, and I'm so excited to have Ben here today, Ben Azadi, the author of Keto Flex, but the master of the Keto Kamp movement, because you've been doing this for so long. It's amazing. Kudos to you for really educating and helping people live, a healthy life. So
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This is a cool studio. I love what you're doing, and we're going to have some fun today.
Absolutely. So, Ben, before I butcher everything,
Everything.
tell me a little bit more, like what got you into this like ketogenic lifestyle? What made you write a book and have a podcast, right? Keto Kamp. Like I think of, when you're in a camp, you're like in it. So tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so I, like so many people out there, followed a standard American diet growing up, and we know it's heavily processed. Yeah,
Sad.
that's the appropriate acronym. It's very, very sad. I also call it a stupid American diet, which is the same acronym, SAD. But, I did the best I can growing up with my awareness, and my parents did the same thing. So my mom worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken, and she would, bring home Kentucky Fried Chicken. I would eat it. So I was a really unhealthy kid growing up. I was obese, actually, and physically obese, but also mentally obese for most of my life. I had bad behaviors to drugs and alcohol and addictions to like video games and food. And as an adult now, in 2008, I found myself 23 years old, rock bottom, depressed, suicidal, looking on the internet for ways to end my life. And the first thought that came into my mind every time I thought of suicide was, what would your mom have to deal with? And I didn't want my mom to deal with that because she's my superhero. Yeah. So it stopped me from pursuing that. But I knew I had to figure things out. And I was playing the victim card throughout most of my life. And a friend of mine handed me a book. And this one book really made a big difference in my life, which led to a second book and a fifth book and a 20th book. And it just these books opened up a whole new world to me. I started to read authors like Dr. Wayne Dyer.
Yep.
As you know, incredible Dr. Wayne Dyer, Bob Proctor, Lisa Nichols, Earl Nightingale, Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins. I mean,
all the
legends.
Influencers.
Yeah,
yes,
absolute legends. And I never even knew they existed until a book was handed to me. The number one thing the books did for me was help me take ownership and responsibility. Yeah. For the first time ever, I stopped being the victim of my history and I started to become the victor of my destiny. And that's where everything changed for me. I moved my body. I ate real food. And in 9 months, I went from 250 pounds down to 170 pounds.
Wow.
34% body fat down to 6% body fat. Finally achieved a physical six-pack, which was a dream my whole life. But the most important thing that I achieved was what I call a mental six-pack and what that has done for my mental health. So, Ari, that was 14 years ago. I've been in this space ever since, learning, unlearning, relearning, and I just love it. I live it to lead it. I try to do my best.
Oh, that's so powerful because when you say, I didn't know who these people were, it's like what a lot of people, like the minute they step on a yoga mat or the minute they, listen to a podcast, like now we have all these tools, but it's like, I didn't know and now I know. Mm-hmm. But the knowing comes with that responsibility.
Right.
It comes with like, do I act on it? So you lost all this weight. You went through your dark night of the soul to then be rebirthed, because at the end of the day, that's it's kind of what I tell people. It's like you go through seasons, right? You went through your winter. You went within to then come out of a shell, like the metamorphosis. So what got you to then start educating? Like what were the processes that you were like, well, now that I've done this, like what made also keto be the thing for you? Because was that the thing in 2000? No. Okay. So what was that process like?
So I lost the weight, and I was one of those fit people that I always dreamed of. And I was working a 9-to-5 job at that time, and I ended up leaving the job to pursue my passions of being a personal trainer. So I was a personal trainer for many, many years, where I just would travel to clients and train them at parks and buildings, et cetera, do whatever it takes. You know all about that.
I know. Yep.
And then eventually that ended up becoming actually a facility where I opened up a CrossFit gym here in Miami many, many years ago with some business partners. And along the way, I was still kind of exploring different nutrition programs and diets and whatever you want to call it, because I still didn't feel that healthy. I was fit, but I was one of those fit sick people. So I still had like acne and digestive issues and brain fog. So although I looked healthy and fit, I didn't feel like it. So I explored a vegan diet, a plant-based diet for a year and a half. I was strict vegan for a year and a half. This is 2012. In the beginning, it was great. And then after a while, the results started to go away. I felt off, did some lab work, it verified how I felt. So then at that point, I was transitioning away from a vegan diet and I wanted to do something else. So that's where I started to study ketosis and intermittent fasting. In 2013 is where I made that transition. And it opened up this just incredible results for me. I felt incredible and I've learned a lot of things along the way. But I started to realize this. So many people are unhealthy without even realizing they're unhealthy. And there was a study that came out in 2018. This is a crazy study. 8,000 people in the study, okay? So it's a big study over 10 years from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. They wanted to determine how healthy or how unhealthy is the adult American population. So they looked at different health metrics, blood pressure, fasting glucose, A1C, BMI, on medication, off medication, these different health metrics. And at the end of the study, they determined that 88% of American adults are unhealthy. 88%. And that was before COVID. You know, it got worse after COVID. So that's what lights me up. The fact that they don't have to suffer and the body was not built for disease. It was built to thrive. So I want to do my part to wake people up and educate them on that.
That's so interesting. I went for my annual physical, and I say it, I'm doing quotation marks. I do my air quotes a lot. And, you know, the doctor's asking me about like my parents and this and, you know, oh, anybody have high blood pressure? I was like, yeah. And I told him, I was like, can we not talk about this? Like, that's not my reality. Right? I live a very different lifestyle. And it was just like all that, like all the information that I know that I've been studying for 20 years, right? Like I was a health coach, like, you know, yoga. And I was like, we tend to like, oh, because this was like this, then it has to be like that. But literally we can change that. Like with a decision. It's like, what's my movement like? I was like, well, my dad has high blood pressure, but he doesn't move. So what? I exercise every day, right? Now, some people here might not know about ketosis. Like for me, I didn't really know about ketosis till a few years ago. So can we tell people a little bit about like what is when your body's in a state of ketosis, what it's doing?
100%. And before I even share that, I love what you just shared about the genetic part.
Yes.
Right? Just because you were dealt a certain amount of cards that are not favorable doesn't mean that's your future, right? A skilled poker player might get a bad set of cards, but they could become victorious because they know how to use those cards, right? Same thing with your genes. You might be born with genes you cannot change. That is true. But epigenetics rules the show. And like your dad, he's not moving. There's so many things we have control. That is a victim mentality saying, oh, you have high blood pressure because your parents have it, or you have heart disease because your parents have it. It's not the case. Dr. Bruce Lipton estimates that 99% of all disease is epigenetics. 1% is genetics. So 100% agree with you. Ketosis, So as you know, but your audience might not know because they hear that I am the founder of Keto Kamp. I have my book, Keto Flex. The first thing that most people think, oh, this guy is probably really dogmatic about keto. He wants everybody to do keto. And that is definitely not the case. I am very non-dogmatic about everything that I teach. My definition of ketosis is as such. It's a metabolic process. It's not even a diet technically. And it's been around forever. Every single one of our ancestors did keto.
Yeah.
All of them. How do I know that? Because they didn't have food available all the time.
All the time.
Winter. You mentioned winter, right? They went through winter and they had to rely on what? Their body fat. And when they start using their body fat, their liver produces ketone. So it's simply a metabolic process. Babies that are breastfed are in ketosis as well. So we've essentially just forgot about this process. Those 88% of people that are unhealthy, I say they're in a keto deficiency. Let's get them into ketosis, teach them how to burn fat, which we know through research is going to lower inflammation, increase energy, help with conditions like type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, and there's a lot of studies even on cancer as well. So to me, ketosis is simply a metabolic process. Do we do it forever? No. Should we all use it? Yes, absolutely.
Okay, interesting. So how do I, for example, I think I'm healthy, right? I eat very healthy. Like I kind of intermittent fast just because now I have a toddler and at some point I eat early, right? By default, I'm thin, I'm fit. How do I determine what's my health meter? And saying, oh, you know what? Like, let me start implementing some ketogenic style. Like, do I need to do intermittent fasting? Because there's a lot of conversation that says like, women shouldn't necessarily always be doing intermittent fasting.
Correct.
So can you tell us a little bit about that? That's a good convo, I think.
For sure. And you're right. Women should definitely do keto and fasting differently than men. And then women who have a menstrual cycle should do it differently than women who are postmenopausal. So there's a lot of intricacies, and chapter 12 of my book is all about keto and fasting for women, and I break it down cycling and then postmenopausal. Yeah, for sure. Because it needs to be different.
Yeah.
The thing about keto and fasting is that there are thousands of different ways to do both of these tools. So a lot of people butcher them and think that one keto approach is the same as another keto approach, and that's not the case. So the way that I teach it is how to lower inflammation. So you mentioned, how do you gauge health metrics and know this is working for you or not, or know if you need to make a change? Number one, how you feel, right? Look at if there's any symptoms. Do you wake up feeling refreshed? Are you energized, etc.? But then we have lab work that we can do. We could get inflammatory markers. We could look at fasting insulin. I like this thing right here called the Oura Ring.
The Oura Ring.
Yeah.
I was like, oh.
Because it's going to track your heart rate variability. It's going to track your resting heart rate. It's going to look at your deep sleep, REM sleep, and changing your nutrition and different modalities will give you clues to if your scores are improving or if your scores are getting worse. So I like using this. But the thing with fasting, you're going to hear a lot of people say fasting should not be done by women because it's too stressful. Or you probably have seen that on the internet.
Yeah, I've seen everything. That's why I'm like, I love these conversations because we can demystify.
Exactly. And that's like saying women shouldn't exercise because it's too stressful on the body, right? Yeah, that could be true if you do a lot of exercise. And yeah, that could be true if you do a lot of fasting. But if you do the right approach of exercise, your body adapts and you get stronger, women and men. So when we think about the word stress, most people, if I asked 100 people outside here at the studio in Miami Beach, is stress bad? I would say that 99% of them will say yes. But that's not true. Stress is only bad when your body doesn't adapt to it. Exercise is stress. You recover, you adapt, get stronger. Fasting is a stress. You recover, you feast, you balance that out with feasting, you get stronger. Ketosis is a stress. You balance that out with getting out of ketosis, you get stronger. So when it comes to saying just it's too stressful for the body, yeah, that's not the whole story. We got to make sure there's a proper approach, and that's what we teach at Keto Kamp.
I love it. My husband and I have all these conversations, right? We're both like super nerds.
I am too. I'm there with you.
Literally in my kitchen, I was like, babe, everybody like says that stress, like, oh, stress, you shouldn't be stressing. And I'm like, I actually like my stress because it keeps me on my toes in terms of like my knowledge, in terms of my lifestyle. Like now, bad stress, unhealthy stress, right? And I told him, I was like, it's mental inflammation. It's physical inflammation. And slowing down doesn't necessarily mean, oh, you're just going to not have that stress anymore. No, slowing down doesn't do anything. It's how you relate to the activities on a day-to-day basis, mental, what you put in your mouth, right? You're like, oh, this week I ate like crap. No wonder I don't feel my optimal. No wonder I didn't rest. I slept, but I didn't rest. Now, let's talk about fasting a little bit more because that's been, I have my love-hate with fasting because I'm that type of person where certain days I wake up like, I could eat a lion right now, right? And then I have a fast metabolism. Like I've always been thin, but and the word should, I don't like it. That's why I'm like pausing. But let's say you're like, I stop eating at 5, I start at 11. Like it's kind of like that, like 16-hour, right? Is that kind of the...
Most people do a 16-8 schedule, yeah.
Okay. What are the things that you can eat during your food times? How much food can you eat? My friend was just here from out of town, and I was like, dude, you lost all this weight. And she's like, I'm intermittent fasting. She's like, I had all this extra. And she was like, oh, it's 11. But then she would, she woke up and like did a run. Somebody that's never fasted. And automatically like, all right, I'm going to start intermittent fasting. And what are maybe some like baby steps?
Yes, great way to start that conversation. I love that your friend has gotten results with it.
Yeah, huge.
Well, your friend is following the cycles of life, which is feast, famine, feast, famine. So fast and then feast, fast and then feast. Every single one of our cells are genetically hardwired to practice intermittent fasting. Now, some people could do more than others. Men could definitely get away with a lot more aggressive fasting than women. But when you think about how do you start, because you're right, people will hear about the benefits of it. And then they're like, I'm going to do a 24-hour fast tomorrow. And that's probably not a good idea, right? So you want to think of fasting as a muscle. If you want to build your bicep muscle, you train it over time. You don't just go into the gym for the first time and do 150 curls. You're going to be wrecked, right? Same thing with fasting. So I like doing either like a low carb approach or a keto approach for 7 to 14 days before we do too much fasting. because that just teaches your body to burn fat. And when ketones are around in the body, it makes fasting much more bearable. Does that mean you have to do keto to do fasting? No. But if you talk about being efficient, I would do that route. But let's say you just want to get started with fasting and you don't want to do keto. You could start with 12 hours. Very simple. So let's say you're done eating at 7 p.m. You go to bed at night. So you use your sleeping window as your fasting window. People sometimes don't realize they can do that, but it's definitely do that. And then you wake up and you wait until 7 a.m. to eat. That's 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. without food, just water, some sea salt. That's 12 hours.
Okay.
Most people probably already do that without realizing it.
Yep.
And then what you can do is either bring your dinner down an hour. So instead of 7 p.m., go to 6 p.m., or delay your breakfast from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. and go 13 hours and work your way to like a 16 daily fast. And then during your eating window, have whole foods, of course, but protein should be the main macronutrient to focus on.
Okay.
So that would be 1 gram of protein per pound of your ideal body weight. So if somebody listening weighs 150 pounds, but she wants to get to 120 pounds, then you want to consume 120 grams of protein during your eating window. So when you do that, it keeps you satiated and full, prevents muscle loss, and it balances out the feasting with the fasting.
Okay. I love that. Again, thank you for to educate people, because there's so many I don't know what to do. And then you try something and you're like, it's not working.
Yeah.
And we want to move people away from that, because baby steps, right? Like daily things that they can do. Okay. So 7 to 14 days.
Low carb, keto. Yeah.
Okay. So what would you say are things that you would want to remove from your diet during those 7 to 14 days? A sweet potato is carbs, but also
for sure
a piece of bread.
Yeah. So sweet potato is going to have a different response than bread, to your point. And I know you know that. So you want to avoid processed carbohydrates. If you're going to have carbs, whole food carbs, right? Okay. Have some sweet potatoes, have some fruit. I would say this, though. The number one food group to remove from your diet, like whether you're doing keto or paleo or whatever it is, vegan, are vegetable oils, seed oils. But I want to really drill this a little bit. Can I?
Okay. Do it.
Because they're everywhere, and they're in a lot of vegan products and even keto products or paleo products. But I'm going to explain why they're so detrimental. I interviewed Dr. Kate Shanahan. She's a medical doctor. She was the nutritionist for the Los Angeles Lakers when Kobe Bryant used to play. Okay. So she was Kobe's nutritionist, and she's a great friend of mine. And I've interviewed her several times on my podcast. The last time was a few months ago, and I said, Dr. Kate, 3 scenarios. Which scenario will lead to disease faster? The first scenario is smoking cigarettes every day. The second scenario is eating processed sugar every single day. And the third scenario is eating these vegetable oils every day.
Ding, ding, ding.
So she giggled and she said, Ben, that's an easy question. It is the vegetable oils. And she said, here's her reasoning. And I agree with her. She said, smoking's not good for you, obviously. Right. But once you finish the last puff, the damage is done. Eating processed sugar, not good for you, but once you could burn off that excess sugar with exercise, strength training, etc. These vegetable oils, they stick around in your body fat, for 2 to 5 years. If you remove them today, 680 days later, this linoleic acid, which is the vegetable oil, is in your body fat, creating systemic inflammation. So audience, you got to avoid the vegetable oils no matter what diet you're following.
In everything. It's not just the chip or the fried food.
Yeah.
Read your labels.
Exactly. I have a gift here that I'm going to give to you, but it's an allergy card. It's a vegetable oil allergy card. So what I do when I go to restaurants, you might think this is extreme, but I show them the card, and on it says, "Dear chef, I'm allergic to the following 8 vegetable oils. I will have an allergic reaction. Can you use these healthier options?" So it has the 8 bad options and then 8 healthy options, and they listen to that request when you tell them that you're allergic. So I'm going to list them for your audience. So please. Canola, bad. Corn, cottonseed, soybean, safflower, sunflower, bad. And then we have grapeseed oil and rice bran oil. Those are Dr. Kay Shanahan calls it the hateful 8. So
grapeseed oil, the one that we use for high temperature, bad.
It depends, right? If grapeseed oil is organic, cold pressed,
okay,
it's a much different grapeseed oil than the regular type. Okay, so it depends on the type you're getting for that. So grapeseed and sunflower, if it's organic, cold pressed, can be fine. But most of the time, it's not. It's going to be processed at high heat.
Okay.
So the safer alternatives will be butter, if you have butter, ghee, tallow, beef tallow, avocado oil, olive oil, coconut oil. Those are a lot better. And if your audience wants that seed oil card, it's seedoilcard.com. Oh, great. It's a PDF you put on your phone, and then you just show your waiter that, and then they don't cook your food in those toxic oils, and it saves you that hit for 2.5 years.
2.5 years.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and again, this is stuff that we didn't know a few years ago. Now it's, in the information I consume, it's been like the vernacular, like seed oil.
Yeah.
But like, I just close my eyes and I see my dad, like for the past, I don't know, we're from Peru and we moved here in 89. And God bless, that bag of Cape Cod potato chips has been in the cupboard for 32 years now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's like, you don't know because you don't know. And then it's like, well, do you want to, now that you know, what are you going to do about it? Like, are you going to eat the chip? Are you going to eat the chip? You're probably going to eat the chip, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's so ingrained as a behavior now.
Yeah.
Well, the amazing thing is the human body is so remarkable. And it's like built to take a lot of hits.
I've been having this conversation with a couple of my people in my space. Like, we have the Yoga Expo coming up. So I have a lot of people that are in nutrition. And it's actually, by the way, guys, it's Saturday, March 18th. And we have some people that are kind of blending the space of what we used to think was really healthy, right? Which was like full vegan, full vegetarian, to now having a more like integrated diet. I know you just did, did you do 30 days of the carnivore diet?
Yeah, I actually went 40 because I felt so good. Yeah.
And I know like Michaela Peterson's done that. Like a few people have been kind of advocating for this carnivore diet, whereas there's people that are advocate for like the vegan diet. Like we have medical medium. Like we have these very polar ways of eating. Why did you decide to do the carnivore diet? And you were vegan. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I decided to do the carnivore diet, what was it, like 4 or 5 years ago. I started to hear all these stories about people who just went on this animal-based, 100% meat-based diet, and it really helped with autoimmune, with skin conditions, with brain fog, and just helped a lot of people break through. There wasn't a lot of research out there, but all these stories were coming out. I even heard it from a lot of my students. So I wanted to start teaching it as a tool, especially for those with like leaky gut, autoimmune. I see it as a very valuable tool because plants have toxins in them. Yeah. Right? They're called plant toxins. And there are hundreds of them. The phytates, lectins, oxalates, etc. Talk about stress. They stress your gut. And yeah, if you already have leaky gut, then it could be too much stress for your body to adapt to. And then things like autoimmune could happen. So by just removing the plants and removing the vegetables, I know it sounds crazy, but for a short period of time, you eat meat, there's no plant toxins in them. Very, very low actually in plant toxins. So you heal the gut, and it helps tremendously with things like autoimmune conditions, which are the majority of the population have an autoimmune condition, whether they know it or not. Yeah. So I decided to do an experiment 4 years ago where I'm going to do 40 days of carnivore. So just red meat, chicken, eggs, and some dairy. And that's it for 40 days. So I did a whole bunch of lab work on day one. And when I say a whole bunch of lab work, Ari, I mean a $3,500 lab panel at LabCorp that did a comprehensive lipids and inflammatory markers and thyroid and sex hormones and everything. And then the plan was to do 40 days of carnivore, see how I felt, and then notice how I feel. And then also on day 40, before I break it, same lab work, let's compare. Okay. Right? That is like the ultimate test. So I did it. Did the lab work, went full on carnivore. I noticed that I ate a lot less because I was so full with the protein. So I was eating 1 meal a day, sometimes 2 meal a days. The first 7 days, my exercise did take a hit. I didn't have that burst. I was kind of bonking. And that makes sense because I went essentially 0 carbs and I was having some carbs before. But then my body adapted after 7 days. And then I just broke through and I felt incredible. Like my brain, super sharp, skin complexion improved. I have autoimmune. I have Raynaud's, and my Raynaud's improved tremendously. I only had 2 small flare-ups throughout the entire 40 days, which was a huge improvement for me at that time. So I felt great. And then I'm like, okay, day 40 has arrived. Let's do the same lab work. Did the lab work, broke the carnivore, and then I saw the results. My inflammatory markers all improved. So C-reactive protein improved, which is an inflammatory marker. Homocysteine, fibrinogen, A1C dropped a point. Fasting insulin dropped. Even the thyroid markers improved. Everything looked better. The only thing that went up is my cholesterol, but who cares because my inflammatory markers went down. So after that, I said, well, there's something here with carnivore. So I think it's a great tool, short term, 30 to 40 days, a couple times per year. And then I wrote a chapter about it in my book because I fell in love with it. So I see it as a valuable tool, especially for those who have leaky gut and autoimmune conditions. For a long time, again, I'm Peruvian, so we were like whole-based food. A little heavy on the food now that Papa la Huancaína and Inca Cola.
All the fattening thing. Moved here to this country. It was so funny because I remember being in 3rd grade, my first, grade here, and everybody was eating cafeteria food, but I came with like my little like lunchbox. It was a igloo where my mom
Yeah.
would make me like meat and like a fruit. And then I went into the yoga world. So I've been through these like kind of like waves of playing with my food and my intake. And everybody was like, meat is bad for you. Like, right? The satya, like, and I was like, oh my God, yes, you're right. We need to like protect all the animals. So actually I was telling you, I was like, no, I've never been vegetarian. I was vegetarian for like a year. I got real sick. I was just like, I don't know what to eat, right? So something I want to just share with everybody is like, when you go one end of the spectrum to the other, like going full carnivore or going vegetarian, like just allow yourself to understand how you feel. Like do the tests, right? Just because we're sitting here telling you like, oh, you know, like the carnivore twice a year, like that might be great for you and maybe not. And I think there's a bigger conversation here as well as to kind of meat you eat, right? It has to be like grass-fed, like, you know, I want to know the cow's name. Like, you know, my mom has chickens. I'm like, okay, I try to eat the eggs versus going to the store. So the quality of the food that you eat is number one. Then we have to start looking at like lifestyle, because if you don't know, like do a test, like that's what I'm saying, like do a test, know what your body is missing, like assess. Like in my business coaching, I'm like, you need to assess, know what's going on. If you're like, oh, I feel like crap, I feel like shit, what's going on? Do a test, go get blood work, and then have a conversation with people like Ben. Or, you know, if you're like, nope, I'm really strict to my morals and I want to not eat animals, then find somebody who's an expert, you know, at helping you stay healthy. So I always like to say this because I think food is such a controversial topic for so many, you know, it depends on your culture, your belief system. Even if we do talk about the environment, if we're consuming a lot of soy, that's like depleting so much farmland and like raising down forests, and same thing. So it's like the quality, like know where your food comes from. If you eat beef, don't eat beef that like they, you know, wiped out half the Amazon for.
Yeah. Absolutely. Quality is so important.
Quality is so important.
I think that's where vegans and carnivore could agree, at least the smart ones, where just eat real food that's actually going to help the environment and not hurt it. Because to your point, you could be a vegan and do things that are actually really hurting the environment. A whole bunch of GMO soy, corn, and wheat. That's destroying crops, right? And then if you're eating a lot of meat and it's these caged animals that are pumped for antibiotics, that's also not good for the environment or the animals, right? So there's a right way to do both ways.
Yeah. So I always like to, when we're having these conversations, like I don't want people to be like, Rah! It's like, first of all, let's be open-minded. Let's educate ourselves, because like I said, the minute I went vegetarian because I wasn't educated, my iron levels like, whee! Like I was pale, I had no energy. And then I started introducing animal product again. And I was like, oh, look, I have muscle again. Like I can do my, you know, I had a very rigorous yoga practice and I was like barely.
That's not fun.
No. And, you know, I did what was best for me. And it's so important to hear about people like you know, and like Dr. Pompa, like, you know, people who are educating us on the different lifestyles that we can implement in terms of our food. So I have another question for you.
Yeah.
So we talked about the carnivore. We've talked about, you know, keto. Like, how do you know if you're in ketosis? That was a question I wanted to get into before. How do you know if you're in ketosis? Like, do you test yourself? Like, okay.
There's three ways to test. There's urine strips, which you could find on Amazon. They're pretty cheap. There's breath meters, and then there's a finger prick for blood. I don't like the urine strips. They're not that accurate, so I wouldn't recommend that.
Okay.
Some breath meters are pretty good, but the most common is checking your blood ketones. Keto Mojo is a company that I use. And if it shows 0.5 or higher, you're in ketosis. So that's the best way to verify that. Once you get really good, like myself, I've been doing this for many, many years, especially keto since 2013. I don't necessarily test. I just know. You just know. Like right now, I know I'm in ketosis sitting here with you. Just because I fasted most of the day. I had a little bit of some like grass-fed beef sticks with some an avocado and olive oil. And then I had my coffee. So I know that I'm in ketosis. So you kind of could feel it and know it. But if you wanted to test, I would recommend a finger prick.
Maybe in the
blood.
beginning.
Yeah, in the beginning. The first couple of weeks would be ideal. Yeah.
Okay. And so as part of the ketosis, we're also talking about the high good fat diet, like during the feasting moments.
Oh, yes, exactly. So if you want to be in ketosis, you feast on high fat, high protein. Actually, not even high fat would be the first couple of weeks, but once you're in ketosis, it's just high protein. You let your body get its fat from your body fat, so you don't even have to eat. That's a big misconception. People think keto is only high fat, high fat, high fat. Maybe in the beginning that should be that's okay, and that's the way I teach it actually. But after a couple of weeks, We drop down the fat, focus on protein, and let the body get its fat from its body fat.
Can you do a keto diet being vegetarian?
Yes. If you practice fasting with it, you can. Because I would argue this. I'm talking about you, Ari. You might tap in and out of ketosis without even knowing it. Because you do intermittent fasting, you're probably active.
Yep.
And just by doing that, your body might be producing trace ketones, but you might not be aware of it. So you might want to test to check.
I know.
Now, at the end of a fast.
Like I'm telling you, now I'm wondering. That's why I'm asking you all these questions. Like it's purely selfish. And I'm like,
check it at the end of a fast and see if you're got ketones. If it's 0.5 or higher on that keto mojo, you're in ketosis.
I'm in ketosis.
I call it the great land of ketopia. It's great for entrepreneurs.
My daughter's like one of her favorite movies is called Zootopia.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah. She's like, Topia, mama. Get a Topia.
Tell her I said ketopia today.
Ketopia, yeah. I'm like, perfect. Is this good for kids at all?
No, kids, they need to be more in a growth phase, right? So less fasting, more feasting. With that being said, I don't think kids need to eat 7-10 times a day and snack all day long. But yeah, not necessarily for kids, ketosis. Okay. It's more for an adult.
After your puberty years.
Exactly. Okay. But babies are, I said it earlier, babies that are breastfed, they naturally go in and out of ketosis because breast milk has saturated fat and cholesterol. And there's some sugar in the breast milk, but the baby's so efficient at using it that it naturally goes in and out of the state of ketosis.
Oh, I feel so informed today. Thank you.
My pleasure.
And now I have the book, which is going to, my husband will probably read it first and then he'll divulge information to me.
Yeah, let him curate all the golden nuggets to you.
Yeah. That's how we do that. He's going into nursing school.
Oh, cool.
And so now he's like in anatomy and he's like, babe, did you know that? Like the best way to get calcium is not from milk, it's actually from yogurt and cheese. I'm like, thank you, babe.
He's
like,
for the nuggets.
not from leafy greens, as people would say as well.
Yeah.
Again, when you don't know, you don't know.
Right.
So thank you for educating us here today. So you guys, who are on YouTube, you can check out his book, The Keto Flex. I'm doing it at all the things. And then Keto Kamp is your podcast, your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And so how do you work with people? Do you do private coaching? Do you have programs, online courses?
I have an online course called the Keto Kamp Academy, where we have members all across the world. And it's everything that I've learned in a step-by-step system. I have 3 health coaches that are on my team. We do group coaching calls. So yeah, my website, benazadi.com, has all of that. My books, my social media, my courses, but my Keto Kamp Academy is our signature course.
Thank you everybody for listening, tuning in, share, and save the podcast, because honestly, maybe you're not in a state for where you want to practice keto right now, but maybe it's going to be in a few months. So you have this resource, use it. And I would say just really reacquaint yourself with your body, reacquaint yourself with how you're feeling, and then see what's the best route for you. That's what I preach.
Well
Assess
said.
and then take some action. Thank you, Ben. High fives.
High five. Thank you, Ari. And thank you to David Arsarno who connected us. Shout out to you, David. We love you, David.
Shout out, David. All right.
Thank you, Ari.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.